Hello, welcome to another edition of the Signature Show. I am Vin Martin Obiora Ilo. Today on our program, we are focusing on an organization in the last 10 years has made a lot of impact on the Nigerian society. I'm talking about the John D. and Catherine T. Macarthur Foundation. In the last 10 years, they've been on a project called the On Nigeria Project. And that project will be rounding off in another year, in 2024. To discuss the impact of this organization in the last 10 years, I have in this special conversation Erin Sine, who is the co-director on Nigeria program of the Macarthur Foundation. I also have Amina Salihu, senior program officer and acting deputy director of Macarthur Foundation. Also on this conversation today is Otive Ibuzo, who is the project director of the Priest, Peace and Justice Initiative, PPJ. Sit back and join us as we bring this conversation to you. Hello and thanks for joining us. This is the Signature Show. Today we are looking at an intervention that has created a lot of impact, especially in the war against corruption in Nigeria. Just a few days ago, the Macarthur Foundation concluded its annual coming together, where they reviewed their work, talked with grantees, and then tried to set an agenda for another 1 year, which, I don't know what I would say, unfortunately or fortunately, might be the rounding off of their big program in Nigeria that has lasted for so many years. So with me to talk about this are very key people in what has happened in this project. Gentlemen and ladies, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me start with you, Amina. What informed Macarthur's intervention in Nigeria?
Thank you, Vin. This round of Macarthur's intervention in Nigeria, which you described as, coming to a close in 2024, is called the On Nigeria program. And by 2024, we would have been on that particular program for about 10 years. How did we come by starting this program? We had a president who in 2014 said to us, assuming Macarthur was just coming to Nigeria today, what would be the most important thing that Macarthur needs to focus on to help this country? And as is our DNA, we went to town and consulted and asked citizens and asked grantees and allies what was most important to Nigeria at that point in time. And an aggregation of all of the feedback that we got led us to recognize that there was one big fundamental we needed to focus energy on, and that is supporting Nigerian-led effort to reduce corruption, in the hope that together we can elevate transparency, accountability, and participation. And that is what has led us to the On Nigeria program.
Otive, well, you've been in this development sector for a very long time, and your organization and so many other organizations in Nigeria are beneficiaries of this Macarthur intervention. When they chose, to focus on anti-corruption, was it something you felt, yes, this is it?
Absolutely. We've worked in the development sector for many years, We've engaged a lot of projects, constitutional reform, health, education, electricity, leadership, elections. And one challenge that runs through all of them is the problem of corruption. So it was a great relief and a welcome development when Macarthur, came after their consultation and brought the On Nigeria project and said the focus was on corruption. So it was quite easy. And for many people have already been engaging, in some little ways in addressing issues of corruption, issues of transparency and accountability, issues of voice, and issues of sanction. And at that time, the knowledge of what needs to be done to deal with corruption was also becoming, very clear to people. So it was a welcome development, and there was cohesion and alignment of ideas between the beneficiaries and the agency that is bringing the support matter.
Erin, I guess you were there at the foundation of this On Nigeria program. Yes, Amina has talked about the aggregation of opinion. Was it easy for those of you in Chicago to agree that the focus should be on anti-corruption? Or did you, based on your work in other places?
It was easy for us to agree because from the very first time our team met, we said, we want to do whatever is important to Nigerians. And so we did polling, we collected data, we looked at other people's polling, we looked at the results of electoral competitions, and it was very clear that at that moment, Nigerians were saying, we are very tired of corruption. And so in that way, the topic of corruption and the promise of anti-corruption rose to the top quickly. And we thought, how can we use our resources to help Nigerians advance their vision for a more accountable, more transparent, and less corrupt Nigeria?
Amina, what was the strategy when you chose, it's going to be focused on corruption, fighting corruption? What was the strategy?
One of the things that we're very grateful for is our ability to learn and to have people around us who are very willing to tell us things, whether it be bitter or sweet, and for us to listen. And we learned quite early that, the theory of change for Nigeria is not that you just focus on civil society or private sector or government alone and expect change to happen. You needed to create a coalescence, of those two important halves, because each needs the other. And when you bring them together, the chances that more will happen is much higher. The second key thing around our strategy, is that we realize that people sometimes think development partners want them to work in silos. So you get a grant and you want to go it alone because you want to be able to report results. But we realized that we needed to have what we call a cohort approach, where our grantee partners see themselves as partners in progress, understand the importance of collaboration, and find organic ways to do that. Because no matter how much resources you have, it's never going to be enough. The quantum of work is so huge. Looking at the size of Nigeria with its 36+1 states, and looking at the dimension and the size of the number of sectors that we have, and the challenge of corruption across all sectors. And so we had our sandwich, strategy, which was really explaining that, like a sandwich, 2 layers of slices of bread, and you need to then bring capacity building, you need to think about skills development. And as we continue to learn, we realize that another third important part of that strategy is to really focus on the people who need to benefit from the work we're doing, who need to gain. And then we better understood and challenged ourselves to locate what we've called agenda, equity, and social inclusion strategy, which is not just part of our strategy, it's also a value. It speaks to who we are as much as, we're defining ourselves and evolving. It also informs some set of results we want to see, who is benefiting, who is not benefiting, and to continue to learn and evolve and to use resources in wise ways. When I say wise ways, ways that not just focus on the project and the grant, but think about the sustainability of the work and the organization. And so we're one of the few organizations, for instance, that give a 29% indirect grant to indirect cost as part of our grant organizations for them to do it in ways that helps them continue their work with or without Macarthur Foundation and the On Nigeria program.
Ibuzo, let me come to you. Amina talked about the strategy that comes with collaboration. Putting grantees into cohorts. In other words, people in related business working together. Has it worked as a participant, as a beneficiary? Has it helped the On Nigerian project?
I think it has worked very well. And I think that strategy was informed by knowledge and understanding that dealing with corruption requires a whole of society approach, and working in silos cannot deal with it. And also with the recognition that dealing with corruption, you have to get the issues of sanction and system. And the systems can only be made better through voice. So voice and teeth were crucial in the strategy. And what happened is that, we're now organized into different cohorts. There is cohort dealing with behavior change, because dealing with corruption, people have to change their behavior from engaging in corruptible transactions to understanding the cost of corruption and therefore standing up against corruption, speaking against corruption, and shunning corruption. In fact, in our own project, which was titled Shun Corruption Project, we have what we call the 3S. Shun corruption, speak against corruption, and stand up against corruption. And there are a whole range of things that you need to do, including communication, IEC materials, radio programs, training, mentoring, giving ways by which anti-corruption messages can be communicated, involving people in actions against corruption, so that eventually, not just individual behavior, but group behavior will change. There's also a cohort dealing with the criminal justice system and how to strengthen it in such a way that when people engage in corruptible transactions, which is a criminal offense, the justice system can handle them. And then there is also what we call joint body, which is made up of several organizations working in different areas of corruption. People working in ways to prevent corruption, such as people working in the open government partnership, that government will sign that they will abide by principles of transparency, accountability, and participation in their own government processes. And then also there is the media cohort, which looks at how to communicate the cost of corruption, communicate corruptible transactions, so that the justice system can pick it up. So all of this works together to ensure that corruption is reduced in Nigeria. And we have fantastic stories of change that has happened over the last 10 years from the intervention of Macarthur on anti-corruption in Nigeria?
I mean, another key initiative in this whole project is what you have called GESI, the Gender Equality and Social Inclusion. How has it helped in this anti-corruption agenda?
Absolutely. So the reason why we have centered, gender equity and social inclusion in our work is because we realize that at the end of the day, whether we spend 1 naira or we spend 1 billion naira, it's about the quality of lives of people improving. So when you have that perspective of the quality of lives of people, you've got to ask yourself 2 questions. Who are the people? And how are we going to reach them to ensure that the quality of life will change? And that's why we began to understand that we need to unpack the way in which we make our grants. We need to support our grantee partners to understand that there are different categories of people who are playing a very important role. My brother Otive has talked about the 4 cohorts that we have, and to get each one of them, along with Macarthur Foundation, asking the question, what change are we driving from this investment? What is happening in the lives of people? From the expression gender equity and social inclusion, you can tell already that the relationship between, women and men actually matters, because most of the time women are left holding the short end of the stick, and you cannot go any further when you leave behind 50% of your population. So in making grants, in some of the work that we do, we have to ask ourselves, what kinds of opportunities are open to women? What is the cost of corruption to women and their families? What's the cost of corruption to young people? And what kinds of opportunities are there for them? Then the social inclusion dimension is also to ask the question, as we're doing this work, how are we looking at the different other matters of diversity, like ability or disability, like geography? Some people are in hard-to-reach areas, some people are in the city. Some people living in the city are at the periphery of the city, or what you call peri-urban areas. But every life counts. And so in order to ensure that the few dollars or nairas that we have to spend is far-reaching, we did an analysis of all of our grants to see how well we were doing. And we also asked ourselves the question, what is the intersection of gender equity and social inclusion and corruption? And we found that in some of the studies that we then used to buttress our argument, we found that when people are poorer, they're most likely going to confront corruption and not be able to do anything about it. Just imagine someone who goes to a public school, takes their child to school. They're told that the school is free, but then they're asked to pay 20 naira. They don't have the money, but because they want a better life for their children and themselves, they cough out that money. They know it's wrong, but who do they report to? They're already poor, they're outside the justice system. Imagine a woman with disability who goes to the hospital and someone says to her, oh no, but why did you get pregnant? Why are you here? She probably, if she's deaf, for example, cannot even communicate well. So again, opportunity to access services are diminished. But when we understand that, different social categories all have needs, and as we think about corruption, and that corruption affects everyone, in different ways, we're then better able to look at our cohort, be it behavioral change, like my brother TV has said, be it criminal justice, or joint body, or media and journalism. In fact, this need to ensure that gender equity and social inclusion is deepened has informed why our media and journalism cohort is not just doing journalism and investigative reporting in the English language. We now have local language investigative reports, because if local communities don't even get the news and the information they deserve and they need, how will they engage? Who will they hold to account? John Body is looking at, he's talked about open government, ensuring that that alliance between citizen and state delivers development. Because democracy is important in itself, but it's even more important when it delivers development. And the issue of constituency projects, which by its very name is supposed to be in constituencies and in communities. And some communities don't even know they exist, and yet these resources are being appropriated on their behalf. So having a gender equity and social inclusion lens helps us to center our organizational value called the just imperative. The just imperative is asking the question, how do we lead with justice? It also helps us deliver results that are specific to people who need to be focused on to have their needs met. And it also helps us understand that it's a philosophy we need to center, because doing gender equity and social inclusion is really one of the things we hope will leave behind, even after the On Nigeria program, in terms of a way of working where we center the needs of the people that, you know, we say we want to protect and work with and support.
How have beneficiaries latched on, to the necessity of gender equality? How have they brought it into their day-to-day work? Let me say, journalists, how have they brought it into their reporting, the people they choose to speak on issues? How have grantees, leveraged?
Well, in the implementation of any project, it goes through a cycle. So what grantees have done is that right from the design of the project, gender equality and social inclusion is taken into consideration. So from the activities that are outlined for the project, you look at the participants that will come for any activity. They have to be gender disaggregated. How many men, how many women, how many young people, how many persons living with disability. And in the allocation of resources, gender and social inclusion is taken into consideration. In having indicators of success of the project, gender and social inclusion is taken into consideration. In reporting back to Macarthur Foundation, gender and social inclusion is taken into consideration. When you are reviewing, so in the whole gamut of project cycle, from design to implementation to evaluation to redesign, we take all of this into consideration. That is why, if you take, for instance, the Shun Corruption project that is being implemented by the Peace and Justice Initiative, we ensure that there are participants in every program, that both men, women, and young people, and persons living with a disability. We ensured that the platforms that we set up to engage in issues of corruption, we have three main platforms. One is Ministers Against Corruption, which has both men, women, young people, persons, everybody. And then we have specifically Women Against Corruption. And then we have another platform, specifically Youth Vanguard Against Corruption. And in formulating activities, there are activities that are done by young people to use music, arts, creative arts, and different kinds of things to promote anti-corruption messages. We also work with Student Christian Movement, SCM, so that they form anti-corruption clubs. So these are all the things you do. That is how Jesse has affected the entire gamut of implementation of GROAD. Every partner who is participating in this project utilize all these principles.
Part of what has happened with your project is that, yes, it's all targeted at fighting corruption, but we've also seen this program throwing up what we have called anti-corruption wins, which also has shown that not every Nigerian is corrupt. What have we achieved with the identification of those few Nigerians who are doing the right thing? And how has it helped the anti-corruption campaign?
You know, we say that the impact of our work would not be felt now, not even in the next 5 years, maybe in the next 10 or more years, because of the seed that we're sowing right now. And you're right, we might have started with an anti-corruption lens, but there's certainly system gains that can be used to effect other aspects of development, which are, if you will, unintended positive outcomes, you know. And we continue to be grateful for those and mindful of those, because our grantee partners, you know, I'm always proud to say that at the first 11. And I mean, if you took, you know, the Priest and Peace Initiative, and you took Center LSD, for example, across two different cohorts, behavior change and joint body, you know, and you look the same way across criminal justice and media and journalism, and you went on our website, you see that our grantee partners are top-notch. They understand this country, they're passionate about the work they do, and they continue to evolve, and they're innovative, and we continue to support them. So when they then focus on something like, take Accountability Lab, for example, that has integrity icon, to the question you have asked. An integrity icon is not really someone who might have name recognition that is already known, but that community members using social media, using radio, using all kinds of, you know, inclusive methods, conclude that this person has shown integrity. And what is integrity? Integrity is doing what you know is right, whether anyone is looking or not looking. Imagine having someone like that. Think of a step up that is working with school children, where school children quite early are encouraged to understand what is corruption and to know what to do not to fall into that particular pitfall, and to think about accountability. And you find some of those children emerging as prefects in those schools. That's why I said the impact will be many years in the future, because that one individual, number one, shows the power of possibility. So where people think it can't be done, then they see this one person doing it. Number two, becomes a role model in a space where role modeling and goal modeling is actually very, very scarce. People wonder, who do we emulate? Who do we look up to? Then you see this ordinary person in a context where you think it can be done, actually following the right path, even though the majority are going in another direction. Third is that it gives us hope. It gives us hope that at the end of the day, it's the humans of this country, Nigeria, who would save this country. It is not development partner resources. Development partner resources can only help to, if you will, catalyze the change that we need to happen, which is why Macarthur Foundation's On Nigeria program says it's about supporting Nigerian-led efforts, because we know this country belongs to Nigerians first. And so having that hope that when we look at one or a few of us, not just individuals, one or two institutions that show that systems can be built, that show that positive change can happen in this country, it really does give one hope. And it makes philanthropic effort like Macarthur's look very good, because it means that we have identified the right, you know, challenge and problem. We have found the right people to lead this and take it forward, and the resources are being used to build, you know, systems and processes and institutions that can outlive anyone and can be adapted in more ways that can sustain the good that we want coming out of this country.
Erin, you know, a foreign foundation comes into a country and decides to focus on anti-corruption. A lot of governments will be quite uncomfortable. Did you have challenges with the Nigerian government when you came with this project, you know, helping and supporting CSOs? Did you have problems with the government?
You know, Macarthur has been working in Nigeria since 1989, and we've had an office here since 1994. And many people have told us, Macarthur, we think of you as a friend to the Nigerian people, because you've been here for so long. You've worked on health, you've worked on girls' education, you've worked on human rights. So we felt like we had a good foundation. And as Amina said, we knew that we wanted to support Nigerians to test and implement ideas about how you might promote integrity or increase accountability or reduce corruption. And part of that was supporting the government. There are many, many reformers in government. Many people who are very energetic, they want to make change, there's lots of potential. So we, on purpose, made a number of grants to our government partners at the same time as we made grants to our civil society partners, we made grants to our media partners, because we knew that we needed many, many people to be working on these issues in collaboration, collectively, to advance the goals that we all wanted to achieve.
You know, when somebody looks at your organization, for instance, and see the amount of money and the energy that you're investing to see that there's a new Nigeria, one wonders, how do you keep a tab on your partners, local partners, to ensure that this money that you're putting out is being used for what it is meant for? How do you do that?
Well, let me just put figures to the question you've asked, because, like I said, 2024 will be like 10 years of the All Nigeria program, and we have invested no less than about 140 million, dollars in this country, and we have over 93 grantee partners, and we have made over 200 grants. I'm sure this is even the data of a few months ago, because we make grants virtually every quarter. We do not need to keep tabs on our grantee partners. I'll tell you why. Our selection process is deliberate, it's intentional, it is meant to study those who are already shifting the needle and supporting their effort. Macarthur Foundation, you don't write a proposal, we don't do a call for proposal. We invite people whose work underscores the goal of supporting Nigerian-led effort to reduce corruption, so that we can have transparency, accountability, and participation. And we say to them, tell us what else you think you can do in a way that you can add to the value of what we need to see to achieve this goal. And then as we make the grant, we don't just make one grant. We don't make a grant to Signature TV, we don't make a grant to Moving Image. We ensure that we give out grants in cohorts. That means at a point in time, we're going to make a media and journalism grant, or a behavioral change grant, or a joint body, or a criminal justice award. We will bring together organizations doing similar work in a similar space and make the grant at the same time. They go through a process of understanding the theory of change, which we had described earlier today during our learning session, as a tree, which you think of as sowing the seed of that goal that we have, watering it with Jesse, watering it with capacity building, watering it with skills building. Then it will grow. You have a strong trunk. The trunk is where the tree grows itself, and that is where we negotiate. Governmental players, non-governmental players, civil society organizing with the community. They get to know each other, they build trust. It leads to branches. Those branches are the outcomes we want to see, of preventing corruption, of prosecuting corruption, of rejecting corruption. And then we can see the green, and we can see the fruits that we have, which will be the transparency, accountability, and participation that we want to see. When you have this kind of vision, there has to be trust. You have to be very deliberate about your selection, and you have to allow creativity and integrity to be at work, and inclusion to happen. And when you do that, the only thing that is left is to agree set points where you meet. What are our set points? This kind of convening. We have learning convening, where our grantee partners are supported with learning partners of their own to think about the results that they want to see, and to have the right to review that result. Because Nigeria, like we say, is not moi moi. It's not easy working in this country. And you might start out thinking, oh, this activity and this plan will work. Then you get to the field and you realize, oh no, we need to change it. You are at liberty to change it, provided your effort is to grow that seed of supporting Nigerian-led effort to ensure that we get to accountability, transparency, and participation that we want to see. Then we convene, like once a year. We have annual reports. We're even asking ourselves the question, how can we make the work less on our grantee partners? Because we want them focusing their energy on the work, not reporting to us. They didn't need us. We found our grantee partners. Their work found us. So when you do that, there's respect, there's understanding, there's empathy, which is one of our values at the Macarthur Foundation. There's creativity, another value. And we're able to focus on the things that matter, which is as important as the project which we're making the grant is. What is most important is sustaining those organizations to keep this Nigerian ecosystem stronger, more open, more accessible, more inclusive. And that is why the 29% that I talked about earlier becomes very important, because not all grant making organizations think about the health of the organizations and the people. Organizations don't run themselves. People run them, and they're human beings. They have everyday needs. And so if we're to ask ourselves the question, how do we live our Jesse value? It will be asking ourselves the question, are we paying attention to the psychosocial well-being of our grantee partner organizations? And how do you do that? You have a resource that gives you the liberty to invest in a way that helps you continue the work. Then learning becomes more strategic, because that person is able to listen to you, they're able to integrate your learning, and then we all win together. So we've never felt a need to micromanage or to follow our grantee partners, because we go for the first 11. And not even the referee tells the first 11 what to do on the field. They already come well identified. You know, their work speaks for them, and you just let them own the field and do what they have to do, because they know the rules of the game and they want to succeed.
Otive, I need to ask you. Here is a foreign organization doing so much for a country like Nigeria. I'm a journalist. I am a media person. And I've seen a lot of investment in the media industry by this program of Macarthur. And I've seen so many organizations that we are going under bet for this intervention. How are grantees, how are Nigerians who, like she said, they are not going to micromanage, how are beneficiaries ensuring that when, for instance, they pull back a little bit in 2024, that the seed that has been sown will continue to grow? That it won't be something that, oh, they've gone, okay, and nothing happens.
Yeah, I think that the beauty of this program is that it's informed by knowledge. So right from the design of the program, sustainability was built into it. One of the greatest instruments of sustainability is the 29% that Amina talked about earlier. So that with that 29% over a period of 4, 6, 7 years, you know, some organizations have been able to acquire their buildings. So you can be sure that the ending of the project will not make landlord to pack them out of their places because of rent. You know, the part of the project is building capacity of staff, and capacity of staff for project implementation, capacity of staff for organizational development, capacity of staff for strategy planning and succession planning. Many things that affect non-sustainability is lack of all of these things, which the project, you know, has built in from the beginning. And the grantees meeting itself is a capacity building process. In addition to that, the design of the project ensure that there are structures which the project helped to establish that will outlive the project. For instance, under the criminal justice cohort, there are e-learning centers which have been established, which will outlive the project. So whether the project ends or not, they will continue. In the media cohort, for instance, there are many journalists that have been trained on investigative reporting. Remember, these journalists will not just speak from anywhere. They are journalists. They will continue to be journalists. So those knowledge received will continue to be used. So in terms of the structure of the program itself, sustainability is built into it. Second, structures and systems have been put in place. if you take, for instance, the Peace and Justice Initiative Project of Shun Corruption, one of the things that they've done is to, because it's focused on Pentecostal leaders and workers, is to ensure that churches, Pentecostal churches, now recognize the dual mandate of the church by focusing on both the spiritual and the social dimensions of the church, and therefore creating a social arm of the church to deal with issues of corruption, anti-corruption work, and other social issues. And as we speak, through this project, at least 93 churches have established social arm, which have also been incorporated into their own strategy plans. So whether the project ends or not, those will continue. Now, most of those churches, in fact, by the last African Anti-Corruption Day, 133 churches decided to declare the Sunday before the African Anti-Corruption Day as Anti-Corruption Sunday, where all the churches will preach messages on anti-corruption. Because from our own research, at least 118 scriptures in the Bible is against corruption. So you can see that from the structure, from the program, from the implementation, and from the systems that have been put in place, sustainability. So it's not one of those projects that when it finishes, you will not hear anything about it. But I just wanted to add that in addition to the systems that have been improved, where we will see the benefit of this project in the future, we started reaping the benefits today. At this 2023 grantees meeting, we had reports of people who, through intervention in constituency project, were able to see, were able to make projects that were not implemented before to be implemented. In our own intervention at the Peace and Justice Initiative, after the training on drivers of corruption within and outside the church, a member who was having a school that was serving as a miracle center for examination had to call all the parents and announce that from now, anybody who is coming to this school must make sure we train the students and they ensure that they write the exams. There will be zero tolerance to exam malpractices. And what happened? Most of the parents withdrew their children from the school. And the lady was so committed that she closed down the school in Kano and moved to Port Harcourt to establish a new school with these new principles. Yeah, with these new principles. So we have already begin to see the challenges. And we've also been recognizing people. Like this woman I talked about and many other people are being recognized as what we call champions of anti-corruption. And I know that organizations that Lustera have their integrity models. So the impact of this project is monumental. We have started seeing it, and the seed that has been sown, it has grown through the trunk, and we can see the branches. And quite frankly, processes, mechanisms have been put in place to continue watering that tree so that the fruits will continue to come.
Finally, you are ending on Nigeria in 2024. A lot of people are really worried, scared. Does that mean that Macarthur is turning their back on Nigeria?
Mbanu. We always say that there are two things. The On Nigeria program is what we call a big bet. A big bet means big bet. You take a big problem of our time and you take a leap of faith and invest in it. Corruption is huge. When you fight corruption, it fights back. And not everyone is able to say, let's deal with it. It's not the same thing as saying provide water, provide school, provide hospital. This is about building the infrastructure that would ensure that those water, school and hospitals are built. So it's very hard. And with every big bet, we revise them. And next year will be 10 years. But the Macarthur Foundation has been in this country since 1989. We've had an office since 1994. And we're not going away. We're not going anywhere. The Macarthur Foundation is not going anywhere. It's the All Nigeria program that is ending. Having said that, one of our principles is always to exit responsibly. And so in addition to this 29% I've talked about, which for organizations that are not considered as public charity in the US, like private sector organizations, still get 15%. Everyone gets something. We are in addition thinking about having what we call an exit grant. Something that allows people not just focus on the work, but you will tell us how you're going to sustain your organization. And we have been sharing this information for the past 2 years, and we still have a year to go, so that people are aware that, you know, after this grant ends, there will be a final grant, and you have to use your resources well, and you have to think about how the work will continue. We've also begun to connect grantee partners with other development partners that we feel might be in a position to take forward the work that they're already doing. You know, recognizing that it can be a very difficult ecosystem, but a very necessary place to work in. With the media and journalism cohort, for example, we have been working to see how, in addition to getting grants, there can be some sustainability models in terms of membership, for example, in terms of products that you can also make available. And the retreat that we had during the Global Investigative Journalism Conference in Gothenburg, Sweden, brought together our grantee partners from, you know, media and journalism to think through how that will happen. And the conclusion is the nature of investigative journalism is such that you cannot say they would not need resources, because they can't rely on advertisement per se. Advertisement can be an opportunity, but that support would still be needed. However, there can be creative ways of ensuring that this process continues, this work continues independently. It could be through adverts. One of the organizations, Himanangu, for instance, is thinking of a sanctuary for journalists to come and refresh, and that's going to attract some kind of funding. They're also thinking about virtual reality, where you can experience something like an IDP camp live, so that you can have empathy and you can understand what kind of policies are needed to be made. And these are ways for people to begin to think about sustainability. The most important thing is that we are enabling critical thought, which is another thing that Macarthur Foundation likes to do. We're not just a grant-making philanthropic organization. We also see ourselves as thought leaders, enabling convening around how to make the elections better, how to make the ecosystem work a whole lot better, how to center youth energy, so that we're preparing for the youth bulge we're going to have in 2050, when Nigeria will be about 400 million and over 70% of our young people will be under 30. That in itself is a potential, but only if we invest strategically in that direction. So we continue to work and evolve with Nigerians. Remember, it's supporting Nigerian-led effort. It's not Macarthur in the front. It's Macarthur as a credible ally and partner and friend, helping Nigerians to lead the change that they want to see.
Any regrets?
None at all. It's always an honor to learn and to work in this environment. And we know that the theory of change for Nigeria is when you bring development partners, supply side players, demand side players, or what we call voice and teeth, or teeth and voice together. Change will happen, but in incremental steps. And so you must guard the changes so that there's no regression, while you use them as a lever to build more. It's an honor to work with Nigerians, this resilience. And I say this not because I'm Nigerian or because I work for Macarthur Foundation, but as someone who has, you know, observed the kinds of energies and the kinds of courage and the kind of can-do and die-hard spirit that Nigerians continue to bring to this country. This country gets to the brink and it's pulled back. You know, people rethink their standpoints, they renegotiate, they rethink things, they retreat and they re-advance. And that is a strength that we cannot take for granted. That commitment and courage of a people is going to be the most essential resource that we need. And taking that and applying it to the nature of governance, and ensuring that the governance space continues to pay attention to the needs of people, continues to be accountable to itself and to citizens, I think is what we all need to do. Philanthropic resources are very important when they enable the citizens to really demand the kind of change they want to see, not drive or lead the change for them. And Macarthur Foundation recognizes that very well in our thought leadership role. And that's why we're also partnering with other organizations, Ford Foundation, Open Society, Illuminate. Because even development partners need to pull together, just as we're encouraging cohorting and collaboration so that we can go further. And we pray the Almighty continues to help our
You have
country.
the last word. What have we, Nigerian participants, what have we learned? And what legacy are we going to hold on to when they leave?
I think we've learned a lot of things. First, we've learned that, like I've emphasized since, that knowledge is required in programming, and that programming has to be evidence-based and research-driven. We've learned that collaboration and partnership is key. That in this work, you need government, you need civil society, you need media, you need whole of society approach in order to have a meaningful game. We've learned that partnership with development partners can help a lot. And if the partnership is good, such as recognizing institutional support, it can bring a lot of changes and development within the organization. And, the legacy we are leaving is that this work, unlike many other donor-sponsored programs, is going to continue. It's going to continue. There are systems, there are structures, and there is local ownership of the process. So whether the program not whether it will going to end. When the program ends in 2024, the work that has been done will continue, and the fruits will continue to grow.
Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for this conversation.
Thank you.
I've been speaking with Erin Sine, co-director on Nigeria program of Macarthur Foundation. I've also been speaking with Amina Salihu, senior program officer and acting deputy director of Macarthur Foundation. I've also been speaking with Otive Ibuzo, who is the director of PPJ. And that was our conversation around the last 10 years of MacArthur Foundation work in Nigeria. I am Vin Martin Obiora Ilo. Do remember to join us next week for another edition of the program, and to watch this program again on www.signaturetv.org. You can also get in touch with us on our social media handles. Thanks for watching.